Well, we've had a pretty dramatic 24 hours here in Alberta, especially on the independence file. I just wanted to update you on what's happened and what it means and what it doesn't mean. So let's start with Bill 14. So the Alberta government has just announced that it's going to amend the Citizens Initiative Act. It's going to amend the Citizens Initiative Act to make the legislation consistent with their legislative intent. Remember, the legislature makes the laws. That's how our democracy works. We elect our MLAs to make laws in the legislature. And if they feel that a court or others are misunderstanding their law or misinterpreting their legal intentions or abusing them, they have the legal authority and arguably the democratic obligation as lawmakers to amend the legislation to make their intention clear. That's what they've done. They've brought in Bill 14. So what am I talking about? You will be aware that the Alberta Prosperity Project, an independence movement, has brought a petition, an application for a petition to seek enough votes to cause the Alberta government to hold a referendum on independence. This is a legal process that the Alberta Prosperity Project is trying to follow legally. However, there's an old carryover section from previous amendments from days gone past in the Citizens Initiative Act that's tripping. And it was this section that said you can only bring a petition on a question if it's not going to potentially violate the charter or elements of the Constitution. There's a bunch of reasons why it makes no sense to have that clause in the law, because if the petition to cause the referendum is successful and then the referendum itself is successful, that leads to negotiations with the federal government, the other provinces, and the First Nations as required by the Supreme Court of Canada in the 1998 Quebec case, the reference case on succession, and the Clarity Act. So there's already a check and balance in the system, and it's way down the road after the petition's been successful to cause the referendum, after the referendum's successful in the majority of Albertans voting to leave Canada, and then negotiations begin. So that section really has no purpose. Fortunately, the chief electoral officer in the summer directed the court to apply this section and review the validity of the Alberta Prosperity Project's petition question. And the Alberta Legislature has been watching this go on, watching how it's dragging things out, and how it's actually frustrating what their intention was as lawmakers for the democratic rights they wanted Albertans to have. They wanted Albertans to have the ability to come together, and if a sufficient number of Albertans, in this case 177,000, sign a petition calling on the provincial government to hold a referendum, then the provincial government will do so. So it's this extremely democratic provision. It's being frustrated by this court entanglement. So Bill 14 came in, and the Alberta government has removed that provision from the Citizens Initiative Act that has been used to tangle this up in the courts, and has used its legislative power to say, this was never our intent. We never intended the court to have this role. This is a democratic process for our citizens. And they included provisions, the government did, in Bill 14 to say that court case is over. Stop it now. That was never intended to hand this democratic process over to a federally government-appointed judge of our superior courts. So that's what Bill 14 is about. It's great news for those who believe in democracy, for those who see a prosperous future in Alberta for our kids through independence, because it means that now the Alberta Prosperity Project, it will be allowed to refile a new question or a new application. They can use the same question. And the chief electoral officer will have 30 days to approve it. And then the Alberta Prosperity Project in the probably starting in January or February, we'll have 120 days to collect 177,000 signatures to compel the Alberta government to hold a referendum. So given what's happened with Bill 14, what is likely to occur now is that, well, with certainty, the court case is over, as it should be. And there will be an independence referendum in Alberta, I suspect, in October of 2026. But there will be one because it's, the Alberta Prosperity Project has 20,000 volunteers, has over 200,000 Albertans that have pledged that they'll sign this petition. So that's the state of affairs there. So Bill 14 is a great day, in my view, for democracy. The proper role for a legislature under our system is to make the laws, to set policy. That's what our MLAs and our MPs and our MPPs are elected to do. And in our system, we have a principle called parliamentary supremacy. That means any sitting parliament can make new laws, can amend existing laws, and can repeal existing laws, including doing it retroactively. That's part of our legal system. It's always been part of our legal system and our parliamentary system that the legislature is the supreme lawmaker. So what we're witnessing here with Bill 14 is the proper functioning of government. It is not an authoritarian step by this government. In fact, it's a demonstration by the Smith government of the importance of this government's views on democracy and letting people decide things and not handing off important decisions to unelected courts. So that's what's happened with Bill 14. So what should have happened today was Justice Feasby should have said, well, in view of the legislation, I'm adjourning, and once the legislation passes, this matter is not even moot. It's something the court doesn't have jurisdiction to deal with, and dismiss the case on that basis. That's what should have happened. But strangely, remarkably, Justice Feasby released an extensive decision that reads more like a political treatise than it does a court decision, and went on with all of the reasons why he thinks under the law prior to Bill 14, the question that the Alberta Prosperity Project had put to the petition was unconstitutional. So, and it's a remarkable read. But what's interesting about it is his decision, as odd as it is, does not in any way affect the power and the discretion of the Alberta government or any other provincial government in Canada to call a referendum on succession independence whenever it wants to. So Justice Feasby's decision today, as respectfully improper as I consider it to be, inconsistent with the rule of law, to seek to override the legislature, is a nothing burger. It's a nothing burger because the legislature has clarified its intention, and that citizens, including the Alberta Prosperity Project, have the right to bring a citizen initiative for a petition compelling a province-wide referendum on independence. And it's a nothing burger because it in no way restricts the powers and discretion of the Alberta government or any other provincial government to bring a referendum on independence whenever they decide they want to do one. So as much as it's been a roller coaster and may seem alarming, it's not. The bottom line is democracy is alive and well in Alberta. The rule of law is being adhered to, with the exception perhaps of this strange decision from the court today. And the will of the people will be respected. That's the message. That's the reality. So very soon you're going to be asked to sign a petition, and will then lead to a referendum, I suspect, in October of 2026. And it'll be really important in the time between now and then that you reach out to your friends and your neighbors, that you talk to your colleagues, the guys on your hockey team, everybody you know, to explain to them the importance of independence, the prosperity that will bring to your community, to you, to your family, to your children, to your grandchildren, and how it is a way out of this dystopian nightmare of Ottawa-controlled Canada under the Liberals, An independent Alberta will not be subject to Bill C-69. It will not be subject to a carbon tax and these other things. It will not be net zero. We will be able to control immigration to reasonable, sensible levels. We will be able to have in Alberta, an independent Alberta, our own criminal justice system. We won't have this catch and release and two-tier politically motivated justice system that we've all witnessed. We won't we'll have a prosperity that will come from our ability to develop our resources. And the reality is we're landlocked today at a policy level, and we have no ability to negotiate with the provinces that are trying to stop us from shipping our goods. Because, for example, British Columbia annually ships over $17 billion of goods from their economy, whether it's forestry, timber, pulp and paper, minerals, aluminum, mining, metallic coal, their agricultural products, their fruits from the orchards, their wine, all the intermodal containers that come from China and Asia, and those markets get unloaded in the Port of Vancouver and other ports. They all travel through Alberta. And if British Columbia is going to say, Alberta, you can't ship your goods through our province, then we are in an independent country in a position with great reluctance to say, well, it's a two-way street. If you're not going to let us ship our goods through your province, then we're not going to let you ship yours through ours. Right now in Canada, we're stuck. We can't take that position because of the Constitution. We're subject to the whims of Ottawa, which we've seen is just granted a veto, the BC government and First Nations over pipelines and other things. So it's really important that you talk to your neighbors, to your colleagues, to anybody you meet about the incredible advantages that will flow to Albertans through independence, the economic prosperity. We'll be able to lower taxes. People will get an instant raise because they won't have to pay crazy taxes. If you compare other countries like Saudi Arabia and others that have significant oil wealth and look at their economy, look at their population, look at the taxes they pay, zero, look at their average incomes, and Alberta's in a better position to achieve those proven outcomes than even what they've achieved. So, and if we don't do this, look at the direction we're on: censorship laws, the incredibly ideologically driven policies of the federal government, the two-tier policing, out of control immigration, the disdain they have for Western Canadian culture, for market economies, for prosperity. We're in a dark place. If people are fearful of the uncertainty associated with independence, I would suggest to you and them that they should be much more fearful of the certainty of the path that we're on, with the federal government, the Liberal government under Trudeau and Carney, having incurred far greater debt than all of the other governments in the history of our country combined, condemning the future of our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren with this debt, which drives up the cost of living, which drives up inflation and makes life unaffordable. That, to me, is far more worrisome than to whatever extent there are uncertainties about the mechanics of independence. So those are my comments on what's occurred in the last day.